We're here on page Yudalid, on the right column, in the last three paragraphs, it says, Af sha'osur lahagdish mechusar zman, dahainu behema kodem yom shmini l'leitasa. We talked about an animal before its 8th day since its birth. You're not allowed to be magdish. But nevertheless, if you want to be magdish and uber, that's okay. How do we derive such a conclusion? It's a kalvachomer. It's even more mechusar zman. Lefisha bebechor nemar. The Torah says vayikra chav zayin ach bechor asher yivukar lashem. And the Gemara offers a drasha of Misha Yevukar Lashem Iato Magdish. Aval Ato Magdish mi beten. So Yevukar Lashem means after its birth, but before its 8th day. Then the Torah says you're not allowed to be Magdish, but you can be Magdish and be better. Ulemedim Shar Kodshim Bechar. So Bechar now serves as the paradigm to derive all karbanos. Shekodem shenolad ein bo din mechusas zman. So mechusas zman is not a psul because it's not right now feasible halachically to bring it on the mizbeach, but rather it's a separate psul of mechusas zman. Chal shem psul mechusas zman, and that psul does not apply in the case of an ubar. An ubar is not called mechusas zman. It's like in a pre-stage, premature of mechusas zman. Shairo Mishuyar. Okay. He was Magdish a behema mu'uberes. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Loza has machlokas where the kedushas of Vlad gives the Vlad a status of Vladas Kodshim or kedushas of Vlad mitrum hegdish piv. Very similar to the discussion we had yesterday about Ben Pekua, where the shechita of the mother is now chal on the ubar as part of the mother. And here too, you could say that the kedushas peh, when he was magdish the mother, is chal vis-a-vis the ubar as well. So it's kedushas peh. Or should we say no? The kedushas peh is chal on the mother, not on the ubar as a separate entity. And when it's nolad, when it's born and it comes out into this world, it doesn't have that status of kedushas peh. And therefore, it has the status of Vlad Kodshim. Just wanted to ask you, are you able to hear me? With Zoom, sometimes it's a little bit confusing to me. Yes? Right? There's no difference in the sound of my voice than on any other Zoom. Is there? No. Okay. Now he says on the bottom of Yudalid, Isbayer b'Gemara, Shaladas Rabbi Yochanan, Shairu Mishayah, Hainu im Omar al Be'ema Muberes Vlad Achulim, V'hi Kedosha, Ein Havlad Kadosh. So we're assuming now that the status of the ubar after it's born is that of a Vlad Kodshim, meaning even though he's Magdish the mother and the mother's already pregnant, that Akdosha as a Maisa Akdosha is not chal directly vis-a-vis the ubar, but rather the ubar is born and it's a Vlad Kodshim. But now he's pointing out that what about a case where he explicitly says when he's magdish the mother that I want this blood to be chulin, I don't want it to be hegdish, and that's called shiure. He's being mishayer in his ma'asak dosh. Normally, you can't be mishayer in a ma'asak dosh. You can't say I'm magdish the leg of the animal, or everything but the leg of the animal. No, the kedusha is nespashta b'kula. But in the case of an ubar, you could be mishayir the uber, leave the uber out of the hakadosha, and therefore, when it comes into the world and it is born, it will not gain the status of Vlad Kodshim, because he explicitly left it out, Mishayir, and he omitted it from the Hakdash, which he can do. So normally we say that if a person would be Mishayir, a Behema Muberes, right? But what I'm saying, forget about Mishayir. Let's say he's Magdish Behema Muberes, then it could be that we view the Ubar as a separate entity, and when it's born, it has the status of Vlad Kodshim. If you hold like that sheet, and apparently Rabbi Yochanan does, then you could do a shiur, because you're viewing the Ubar as a separate entity, and now you could do a shiur, which means you want to be Magdish the mother without being Magdish the Ubar, and you leave out the Ubar, because again, as we said, the Ubar is only V'toras, we're anticipating Vlad Kodshim, but it's right now, it's a separate entity. Umishum shel Rabbi Yochanan Uber lav yerach ima. Oh, so I didn't cheat. I didn't see that on the top of the next column. What that means is that Rabbi Yochanan maintains, waves the flag that the Uber is a separate entity. Even as an Uber, it's independent of its mother. It's lav yerach ima. And that's why the status of the Uber would normally be Vlad Kodshim, but he could do a shiur in Akdasha and specify that the Uber would retain its status as chulu. Very nice. When does Rabbi Yochanan attach or categorize the Uber as a Vlad? That's only when he didn't say anything to the contrary. He didn't explicitly indicate a shiur. And therefore we assume that his Hakdasha was a full-fledged Hakdasha on both the mother and the Uber, such that now when the Uber is born, it has the status of Vlad Kodshim. But if he explicitly excludes the Uber from his Hakdasha and he assigns the status of Chulin to the Uber, that he can do, because the Uber is a davar b'fnei atzmo. It's lav yerech ima. So again, in a stomach case, meaning where he wasn't mishayir explicitly, then we consider as if he did a hakdasha that was twofold. He was magdish both the mother and the Uber, and therefore, when the Uber is born, it has the status of Vlad Kodshim. Oh, so wait a minute. Something is fishy over here. 1 second. If we're assuming that if he wasn't Mishayir, then he was Magdish both, and then the Kedushas Peschal, even vis-a-vis the Uber. Omar Vlodochlin, the Hikadosh, Areze, Elo Higdish, Elisabim, Velos Havlad. Right. That's called Shir. Yusuf Havlad Midin Vlodos Kodshim. I'm going to read this one more time, just to make sure we have it. Let's start again. Shirei Meshuya. Hamagdish behema muberes. Nechlechu bagemara Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Elazar in kedushas havlad umishum vlados kodshim o shekedushas havlad mishum hegdish piv. Well, now we can make sense out of this. If we say that Uber Lav Yerech Imo, then again, in the case where he wasn't Meshayar, then it's Kedushas Peh. And we assume that his Maisak Dosha was both on the mother and on the Uber. So the Uber now has Kedushas Peh. If, on the other hand, we say that Uber Yerech Imo, then with its birth, the Vlad now has the din of Vlados Kodshim. I'm not sure exactly what the nafkamina is, whether you call it Vlados Kodshim or you call it Kedushas Peh. I guess it has to do with the next generation. Now, if you hold Shiurei Mishayer, so he excludes his hakdosh, he excludes the Uber from his hakdosh, and he says that the Vlad should remain chulin. Then the Vlad is not Kodesh. Why? Because the Vlad is a separate entity. But if he doesn't explicitly Mishayer, then you have hakdosha both on the mother and on the Vlad, and that engenders the status of Kedushas Peh to the Vlad. Achim Omar Vlada Chulin Vehi Kidosha, that's Shir, Harei Lo Higdish Elasaim Vlos Vlad. But what's the status now of the Vlad? I would have said that the Vlad is now considered Vlad Kodshim. I mean, he doesn't say that. So let's just see, he quotes the Sfas Emes in the next paragraph. Maybe that'll shed a light. He's saying, Biru achronim shel das Rabbi Yochanan lo nemar din vlados kodshim shem kedoshim mikoch imam ela im higdish behema v'achach nisabra ach b'magdish behema muberes lo nemar din vlados kodshim. So then the only kedusha that would apply to the Vlad would be kedushas peh, and that would depend upon whether he was Mishayar or he wasn't Mishayar. So this is a pretty big chiddush over here that he's quoting in the name of the Sfas Emes, namely that there's no din of Vlados Kodshim unless it is mikoch ha'em. And mikoch ha'em means that at the time of the Kedusha, the mother was already pregnant with the Uber. However, if she wasn't pregnant at the time of the Kedusha, then she became pregnant, and we're holding now Uber Lava Yerachim according to Rabbi Yochanan. So the only din that could apply to this Vlad would be Kedushas Peh, not Vlad Kodshim. It cannot be considered Vlad Kodshim because she was not pregnant at the time of the Kedusha. No, I'm sorry. Did I get that right? Let me try that again. It's only considered Vlad Kodshim. On the contrary, I think I said it the other way around. If he was Magdish the mother and then she became pregnant, so then the status of Vlad Kodshim derives itself from the mother. The mother generates the status of Kodesh L'Mizbeach because she was already Kodesh L'Mizbeach before she became pregnant. So when the Uber comes into this world, so to speak, it is the recipient of the status of Hegdesh that was generated by the mother. And when it's born, it has the halacha, the status of Vlad Kodshim. If, on the other hand, the mother was already pregnant with the Uber before the Akdosha, then we have to ask whether or not there would be a Akdosha on the Uber. If there's no Akdosha on the Uber doesn't have the status of Vlad Kodshim, because the Uber already emerged as a separate entity before the Akdosha of the mother. So that the mother cannot generate a status of Hegdesh, Dushas Mizbeach, to the Uber. So then you have only one option, and that is a Kedushas Peh. And that depends on whether shear or low shear. So if low shear, he had a separate Akdosha in addition to the Akdosha of the aim, he had Akdosha on the Uber. And that's in a case where at the time of the Akdosha of the mother, she was already pregnant. Which means that the Uber already is a separate entity, Lav Yerech Imo, or he calls it Kibema B'fnei Atzma, so it requires its own Akdosha. In the absence of Shir, we'll assume that when he was Magdish this animal, and this animal was pregnant, he meant to have a separate additional Akdosha on the Uber. But if he's Mishayir, and he says, let the Uber remain chulin, and the Uber could not have the status of Vlad Kodshim because the mother was already pregnant before the Akdosha, then through his shear, the Uber will not, with its birth, will not gain the status, acquire the status of Vlad Kodshim. Ulidas Rabbi Elazar Shiro Eino Mishayim. Ainu, Gamim Omar, he explicitly stated that Vlada Chulin, nevertheless, he Kedocha. I'm sorry. If he was Magdish the mother, and he said explicitly that the Vlad should remain Chulin, Hari Vlad Kodesh. Let's just see if we could figure out why. It can't be Midin Akdosh because he explicitly said Vlado Chulin. Unless it's Butler Daito Eitzel Kolodom or something like that. But if we assume that he has a right to exclude the Vlad, he did so. So there's no Keducha's pet. But Rabbi Luz is going to say that the Keducha is now the Midin Vlad Kodshim. Let's see what he says. The feature Rabbi Eliezer, Ubar Yerech Imo, Lefichach Eno Yoch he goes the other way. That Butler Daito, he doesn't even have the power and the Bible is to exclude the Uber from the Akdosh because the Akdosh is on the mother and Uber Yerech Imo is part of the mother. Lefichach Eno Yoch L'Shayra Saflad Shelo Yiskadesh Mishum Imo, like we said, Pashto Kedusha Bekula in the case where he's Mishayah the Regel. Ela Vlad Kadosh Mishum Din Vlados Kodshim. I don't get it. Why do you need Vlados Kodshim? It should be Kadosh Midin Akdoshas Peh. 1 second. I think he's saying, which we didn't even consider this possibility, that the Akdoshas Peh is B'Toras Yerech Imo, but with birth, Anum Chadoshes Bolakam, we need a new Hakdosha. Hakdosha's Peh as part of the mother will not help when the Uber is born and now it's a separate entity. It needs its own Hakdosha. What happened in the past is completely gone. In other words, the Magdish has no ability, it's fairly interesting, according to Torah law, to prevent the emergence of Vlad Kodshim. If Vlad Kodshim is just the reality. Like Bukhar, right? A Bukhar is the firstborn, and that's Kedushas Bukhar Lebizbeah. You can't prevent that from happening. You can't say, well, I don't want my Bukhar to be Kadosh. You can't say, I don't want the Vlad Kodshim to be Vlad Kodshim. It is Vlad Kodshim. What you can do is you can exclude it from Hakdoshas Peh, but that you can't do either. Why? Because Uber Yerech Imo. But the Uber Yerech Imo, what is Uber Yerech Imo accomplishing here, according to Rebbe Loza? The Vlad is a Vlad Kodshim. I don't know why I have to enter into the. What is he gaining by adding Uber Yerech Imo? Eno Yochel is Shires of Vlad. So he's learning apparently that Vlad Kodshim has a mechanics to it. It's not just, well, there's a Metzius of Vlad Kodshim, but rather the Kedushas Ha'em generates a Kedusha on the Vlad.
Good. How's your year going?
1 second, I have to do something to the technology here.
Where are you at?
Okay. Are you with me, Rabbosai? He's saying now that the Kedusha of Kedushas Vlad Kodshim is generated by the mother, which is logical. And now we have to introduce Uber Yerech Imo. Why? Because if you were to say Uber Lav Yerech Imo, like we said in Rabbi Yochanan, then you could do a shiur, which is exactly what he's doing in this scenario. And by doing a shiur, he is removing the influence, the impact of the mother on the Vlad. And he's saying that the Vlad is a separate, independent entity, and it has no relationship to the Kedushas Mizbeach. And the fact that the mother, he was Magdish, has no impact on the Vlad. And therefore, even when on the Uber, and even when the Uber is a Vlad, it's born, it comes out into this world, the mother does not have koach, so to speak, of power to generate the status of Vlad Kodshim to the Uber. Why? Because just 1 second. So again, why? So why isn't there a So again, as far as Kedushas Peh is concerned, it sounds like he's saying that the shear is valid, it's operative. As far as the halacha of Vlad Kodshim is concerned, that the Vlad should not, how should I say, gain its status as Kedusha through its mother, that he can't do. Why? Because Uber Yerech Imo. Again, I'm still trying to rack my brains why there's no Kedushas Peh in this case. You're holding that Uber Yerech Imo. That point I can't figure out. For some reason, unbeknown to me, there's no Kedushas Peh here, even though he's holding Ubel Yerech Imo. But there is a Kedusha Vlad Kodshim. So when he's Magdish the mother, the Uber will have the status of Vlad Kodshim because of Uber Yerech Imo. But as far as Hakdoshas Peh is concerned, since he was Meshayer, and he said explicitly, I declare that the Uber to remain Chulin, that's enough to undermine the Kedushas Peh, but not enough to undermine the Kedushas Vlad Kodshim. Okay, so stop here. Let's see, that's going to be Sunday. Sunday, we will complete the Hakdama to Tmura. And Monday, we start a new Hakdama. So I suggest, or I want to think about it and get your approval as well, that we would start Hakdama to Masechta Nida. Get our feet wet in Taras. Alternatively, there's a short Hakdama to Masechta Bechoros. It's only about 4 or 5 pages. So we might continue in Kodshim. Okay, now we'll learn some Yavamas now.